I basically work in the field of obesity and diabetes reversal. It is possible to reverse to a large degree, provided they maintain their body weight and an athletic tendency. The biggest myth would be that you have to take medicines lifelong. People confuse fitness with exercise. So there's nothing wrong with the gym. You should always first start with the diet and then go to exercise. There's a word called relapse in this whole science. 40 to 50% would be genetic. You have too much liquid income, which is being spent primarily on food, salt, oil, and sugar, become dopamine. It's not nutrient anymore. You're eating 20 years of calories ahead of time. So you're going to get a disease that should have come 20 years from now itself. India has an estimated 212 million people with diabetes out of 822 million people globally. 1 in 4 people in the world with diabetes is from India, making it the most affected country in the world. Is there a way to reverse diabetes? Let's get to know on diabetes reversal, taking lifestyle medicine as a career option and more from Dr. Malhar Ganla, co-founder of Freedom from Diabetes and a social media influencer. His mission is to help people reverse diabetes and live a life of health and vitality. Hello, Dr. Malhar. I welcome you to the Crazy Careers podcast. It is really an absolute honor to have you here today. Thank you. Thanks, Nita, for having me. So, before we begin, can you introduce yourself and let us know a bit about yourself, your journey so far, and the work that you do? Yeah, so it's been a little weird journey. Of course, I'm Dr. Malhar. I'm from Pune, and I'm basically work in the field of obesity and diabetes reversal last 10 years now. And more importantly, of course, I also did my master's in the same subject from New Zealand, but I also studied a little more management and entrepreneurship from Stanford and other places. Currently, I'm authoring a book also. But to tell you the truth, my calling was always working with people. I just didn't know in what domain, but the medical domain, of course, provides a little easier way to do it because people come to you with their problems directly, and then you have a chance to work with them in a much deeper sense. So, given the last 10 years now, we have been working with people afflicted with diabetes and obesity, and it's been really nice. We've done close to about 60,000 patients now in the last 10 years, and across in 40 countries, sitting right here in Pune. So, it's been really nice. And other than that, of course, I have a cafe also, a coffee shop that I love. So I go and sit there very often. And I also venture capital with a few other companies, startups. So that's what. So how did you basically start this particular journey of creating awareness about obesity and diabetes? It didn't start like that. I was always doing a lot of triathlons and Ironmans back in 2010, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. So I was doing a lot of athletic stuff. I'm very still doing it. And through all that, I felt that, I had a choice in New Zealand. I could have just done that stuff. It's a very nice life where you make some money, you park it, and whole day and night you're swimming, cycling, running, climbing mountains, and it's a very passion driven life. But somewhere that conscience thing started to happen that this can't be everything. You have to start doing things with people, and you have to run businesses, do some work also. But although that's a great life, and I would go back to it at some point in time. But when I was there, I had that moment, that I wanted to do my master's in triathlon itself, in marathon, endurance sport, basically. My guide didn't allow me there. He said, we don't need more, we don't need more people working with already motivated people. We need people coming down and working with. And since you are from the medical field, why not stay with your profession and then add your passion to it rather than trying to completely leave your profession and just get into something? Because primarily because in your mind you're always an athlete, but you're never going to play at that level because that requires certain level of talent. And I realized very quickly talent is a different thing in the world of sport. So I realized that blending both professions makes a lot of sense. So you are an athlete by passion and you took it as your profession, not entirely, but then yes, part of it is involved. Make athletes out of my patients instead. Right. That's a great. Yeah. So many believes that diabetes is a lifelong condition. So do you think it is? The truth. It is. See, about, I would say, if you take the types of diabetics that you have, so type 2 diabetics, type 1 we'll not discuss because they are insulin dependent, and that's an act of nature in a way. So they will always be diabetic. But for type 2, there are a few types within the Indian, demographics. So we see the overweight, overnourished diabetics. They're just too much food going on, and they're just overweight. The second category are so-called normal weight, but they've just put on a lot of fat.
And then you have a third category who's basically, again, a very thin and lean diabetic. So the top two categories where there's too much fat and there's too much weight, both these categories, it is possible to reverse to a large degree. So they can go years and decades without medication, provided they maintain their body weight and an athletic tendency. Like they train a little, they eat a little clean, they can live without medicines for many, many years. Okay. So, coming back to why we talk about medication freedom, you have to understand that medicine adjusted living is an inevitability for all of us. At some point in time, we are going to start getting dependent on some medicines to live. Lifestyle diseases have an option where if you can go off change your lifestyle, you actually don't need the medicines. So diabetes, again, there are two types. There is the insulin medication dependent diabetes, which we don't take the patient off. Similarly, there is the large percentage, I would say 50 to 60%, where if they change their lifestyle, reduce their weight, they don't really need medication. But right. Conditions apply. The asterisks will always be there. Okay. They can't eat, they can't live like a non-diabetic. They have to remember that, yes, diabetes is there.
Right. So what is the biggest myths about diabetes that one should know?
The biggest myth would be that you have to take medicines lifelong. Once you start a diabetic medication, you're never going to be able to stop it. I think that's the biggest myth. And we have been able to get almost 17,000 people off medicines in the last, 10 years. And that's been one of the great achievements that we've been able to do. And of course, thousands more have learned from the content that we create, attend the webinars, go back and implement those things. And then, they may, so many more may be free that we don't even know, So, but we always suggest that they should be tapered. The medicine should be reduced by a doctor, not on their own. Even if the sugar is so low, they shouldn't reduce their medicines on their own. They should always get it verified by, health professionals.
Right. So, since you are in the field of fitness also and you love fitness by yourself, so what is the biggest mistake if someone wants to adopt life of a fit life and a healthy diet, of course? So, what is the biggest mistakes they make?
I think the biggest mistake is jumping into too much exercise. People confuse fitness with exercise. So they'll immediately join a gym. They'll start working out. Now, the body is not ready to work out initially. You haven't worked out for a few years. Let's say education happened. So in many cases, marriage happens, children happen. So there's been a 10-15 year gap where you have not really done any kind of physical activity, let alone structured activity. People tend to compare when they enter the gym. People are doing 45 minutes, 1 hour of workout, cardio, weights, and you haven't done it for a long time. So the best place at that time is to start with the diet first, because people usually start with exercise, which is the number one mistake, because exercise reduces your blood sugar all the time. Muscles get hungry. And when they come back home, they get double hungry than what they used to. So they start eating more and more. So the number one, and then they say, I joined the gym and my weight increased. The reason it increases because your hunger increased. So there's nothing wrong with the gym. The problem was with the sequence of events. So you should always first start with the diet and then go to exercise. That's the number one mistake.
Right. How does FFD's treatment actually differ from the conventional diabetes treatment?
We are just holistic. So we have what happens in conventional medical practices. There's usually one doctor, and in some clinics today nowadays they have one dietitian also. But the dietitian consult in a way is a little bit of a formality. The patient doesn't take it too seriously. He has gone there to take medicines. So he takes the medicines, he spends time with the doctor and answers all his doubts, See, medical practice is all about somebody telling you your future. So in 5 minutes, a doctor has to tell you, look, you are fine. The kidney function is the liver function. And they're in a way settling your nerves, telling you you'll be fine. Just take these tablets. That's mostly medical practice. But the larger part of the holistic part, which is the lifestyle part, requires a lot of convincing, because patients are not ready to make a mental shift. So for us, a large part of our practice is cajoling, convincing patients to do things that will help them reduce medication dependency. So many of them are so convinced with years and years of medicine intake that that's the only way to live. So we spend a lot of our time, all our experts, our diet experts, exercise experts, dietitians, everyone, just convincing the patient that, better is possible. So that's what we do different. We even have 10 psychologists full time. So we start with all parts, like, the diet, the exercise, the mental part, of course, the medical part. So when all this comes together, and then finally the athletic, the fitness part combined with the higher protein intake. So we call it the cow to horse practice. So when patients join, they look like a cow. with a higher fat percent, and when they leave, they look like a horse. So that shift from here to here. So cow is about 40% body fat. A horse for the same weight is 15% body fat. And that shift is primarily what creates a horse is very resilient, strong, better quality of life, longer life expectancy than a cow. You get the difference? So that's primarily what we do to sum it up.
Right. So how much time does it take for the complete transformation?
So there are 3 or 4 phases. The first phase will always be just adjusting. So that's the fat loss phase, the first 3 to 6 months. That's just diet and fasting driven. The next 6 months is the fitness phase where people start training and exercising and putting on muscle, eating more protein. And, so it takes about, I would say, 1 year for a physical shift and 1 more year for a behavioral shift. So I would say reversal and remission is a 2 year game because you're changing 40 years of habits. People usually think 3 महीने में डाइट करके 5 किलो कम हो गए मेरा काम हो गया. Fair enough, but the next 3 months you'll be back because the mind hasn't yet, changed. Habits have not changed.
So do you think that mindset also plays a role during the transformation and even after the transformation? Once you are transformed, you have to retain that for a longer period of time. So mindset also plays.
There's a word called relapse in this whole science. Whenever you make a change in your life, you tend to come back. So that relapse is very powerful and it's very frustrating for many people. And there's also a genetic tendency. See, addiction, food addiction, alcohol addiction, smoking, any kind of addiction, these run in families. There are genes for this. So there, if you and me start eating ice cream every day, I may actually start eating much more ice cream every day than you might. It's not necessarily that it was the ice cream or anything. It was just my inherent tendency to have it. So till that we don't learn to find our own coping mechanism to reduce that, a person can't call himself a relapse. Now, what, remission, but my belief is if you can shorten your periods of relapse, let's say you're a sugar addict. You need 4 or 5 teaspoons of sugar every day. You slowly go off, you come back to 1.5 teaspoon, then again you go back to 3 to 5 teaspoons. How much time do you go back to 3 to 5 teaspoons for is the game. So let's say you do 6 months of good, control, you're living well, you're exercising, and you fall back for a month. It's not such a bad thing. But if you fall back for 6 months again, then it's very frustrating. So I always believe that if your period of relapse is shorter than your period of implementation, in a way you are moving towards a sort of healthier and more in control life. There's never going to be a world where you're never going to consume sugar. So we don't want to create those kind of silly, perfectionist, idealistic demands of people. We just want them to tell them that when you have it, don't go down the slippery slope that now it's every day and suddenly it's 6 months.
What are some main reasons for someone to get diabetes, and what are some symptoms that one should identify? Okay, I have diabetes.
About, I would say 40 to 50% would be genetic. So if you have it in your family, there's a high chance that. But then having said that, the number one cause is a disposable income. Okay. If you have too much liquid income, which is being spent primarily on food, you are eating a lot of outside food, and khana has just, nobody eats rice, dal, roti, sabji in too much quantity. Nobody does. Or even if you do and you're making it too rich, which is you're unnecessarily adding a lot of oil, cheese, butter, ghee to it. This is a home-based problem where a lot of the food nowadays, as we've got used to rich food, others we feel इसमें taste नहीं है. तो इसको SOS principle कहते हैं, the salt, oil and sugar. If you add too much salt, oil and sugar, basically you want tadka in everything. It's become dopamine. It's not nutrition anymore. It's just become a source of entertainment. Then you're going to pressurize those genes which would have come in at 60. You will trigger them at 30. So we see a lot of 30-year-old diabetics. I see 20-year-old diabetics now. And the only reason is too much exposure to SOS too early. And again, the family backing is there in terms of the genetics. So, if you're eating 20 years of calories ahead of time. So you're going to get a disease that should have come 20 years from now itself. So number one cause is disposable income. Okay. Number two cause would be just too much junk food. And by junk, I mean SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. It doesn't have to mean outside American brands. It can be Indian food also. And of course, the number three in general is just lack of sufficient exercise. Indians believe walking is exercise. Well, walking is a form of transport. It was never supposed to be exercise. But in our wisdom, we have converted a 1 hour walk with blabbering to exercise. So it is what it is. We fight a lot of battles. Indians don't believe in doing structured things. They're like, everything is about, I feel good right now. So मैंने ये खाया, I felt good. I went for a walk, I felt good. Everything is about feel good. And exercise is never going to be, while you're doing it, it's not a feel good thing. There's a little stress there. But when you're done, you feel great. But convincing Indians to do structured exercise frequently when there is no need to is very hard. Is very hard. So you would have seen it, it's not easy to convince. So these top three reasons are there. Number one is the spending on too much spending on food, too much obsession with food per se. Every meal is about the meal and then the next meal and fir kya khayenge, fir kya khayenge. So, and now we can afford everything. We don't see the right hand side of a menu anymore. The prices nobody sees. My kids don't see. So they're like, I'll have this. Everyone sees the left. But it is what it is. This is the new India now. Nobody is money is not a problem anymore. The problem is going to be,
Yes, everyone wants to become aspirational. So
yeah, and thoda sa wo, and then there is that you have raised the bar of happiness in every meal. You want certain level of uh, dopamine or satisfaction, and the reels are there to pull you. So hota hai, like I said, we'll cope. Everyone will cope. It's all just about education. Just about it.
right, right. And what are some symptoms that someone can find it out by themselves? Like, okay, they have diabetes and they should go for a test.
Yeah, most common symptom is a non-healing wound. Most common symptom. So when they get hurt and it just doesn't heal and it gets infected, and then they finally land up at the hospital and then they realize, oh, your sugars are also high. Okay. Otherwise, there are smaller symptoms: frequent urination, lot of sweating, lack of sleep, many headaches. That because the sugar fluctuates a lot. If they have not eaten, it goes very low, very high, so they get frequent headaches. Loss of weight is a very common symptom that we see. Sudden loss of weight, and this is not the healthy weight loss. This is the muscle loss. They look really shrunken. But these are, face looks gone inside, and people say, "Kya ho gaya? Bimar hai kya?" That type of look. So these are 4 5 symptoms that are very. In children, we usually hear that their bathroom have suddenly got ants. So when they urinate, there's a lot of ants suddenly in that area. So it tends to contain a lot of sugar. These are some things that we do see. A lot of hunger comes in. People get hungry randomly, and they get such kind of hunger that they start sweating. Again, it's the high lows of sugar, right? So these are 4 5 symptoms, but the most common that people get diagnosed is just by accident. They land up in a hospital for something else, and so it's a very silent disease that way.
Right.
Most people will not know. We say India is about 20% undiagnosed diabetes. People don't know. COVID actually opened up that door. A lot of people went for tests and then realized.
So even stress and anxiety also add to diabetes.
They do. They do. Stress, anxiety do cause. There's a hormone called cortisol, right? So there's a lot of cortisol secretion, increases abdominal fat, increases blood pressure. There's lack of sleep with stress. Relationship issues are there. There are a lot of things that can cause chronic. Heart rate also rises. So you're basically stressed as a human being. Then it will lead to some repercussions, including overeating. People use food as a balm. They do eat a lot of sweet food just to, calm the nerves. And a lot of sugary drinks happen. Hey, again, you have to be very rational about what your cause is. We always.
At least the good thing is that we are getting to know about these things now.
The problem is still with acceptance. People know everything. They'll chat GPT everything. They'll Google it. When it comes to this themselves, there's a huge amount of denial. नहीं मेरा मुझे नहीं हो सकता और मुझे है ही नहीं और it's a scam. ये सब scam है. Again, that's part of our Indian psyche. Our first tendency when someone tells you something is को क्या मिल रहा है.
Can you share some inspiring journeys on some people who have taken treatment from you and then have a beautiful transformation?
Amazing stories. My favorite stories are always menopausal age women because to me, they are the forgotten generation. When you have done your duty to the kids, to the house, to maybe they worked also, they made a living. After all that, at 50, women are just tired. And that's when their hormones kick in and they get diabetic and they are so frustrated because the children have now taken off. So either they are academically or in their own relationships or whatever. You're not their priority. Husband finally is tired of his own work. He's also run around the world. So he's also playing golf or doing whatever. The women tend to get very left alone because they don't have hobbies per se. And to me, the amount of women that have come into our system that age who have reinvented themselves. Like you take Garima, she's from Indore, one of my favorite stories. I think she was about 75, 80 kgs or maybe more, 88, I think. She came down almost to, I think 54, 55, lost 25, 30 kgs, started cycling, started gymming. And I remember I went to Indore last month for the first time, and we met after 4 years. I've never met most of these people because this program is online. She said, "Sir, मैंने cycle लाया है, अपन 60 km करेंगे." We both went for a 60K bike ride that morning. It was such amazing to see the kind of shift because she was diabetic on insulin and whatnot and whatnot. Today, no medicines, no insulin, nothing, cycling 60K all by herself. And I know the power of those rides to transform a human being's baseline happiness level. So there's a hormone called serotonin. And when serotonin reaches a particular level, you can just see it on a human's face. They're just, the word is sorted. Like they don't get offended by small things. They don't notice achara pada hai. They just live a very different life. They don't get like if someone says something stupid to her, she'll be like, "Ha, theek hai." It just doesn't matter because you have become, you're like fully achieving in your own mind. And I could see that she's conquered a disease. She's getting a diet in place. She's spending money on her own nutrition. She's making decisions. And not just her. I've seen so many people in the program just take back control of their lives.
Yes.
And that is what most people want. They just want the freedom and the ability to make decisions for themselves. That I have seen across. Like Thomas, he's another guy, 72 years old, met us when he was 69. His own doctors had said, "It's time now, Thomas, slow down. You're retired, sit at home, diabetes is there." We call this Madhya Pradesh. हम इसको मध्य प्रदेश कहते हैं. So his Madhya Pradesh had come like 40 inches, totally fed up. Everyone's telling him, "Bas abhi." The guy came with program, he lost 15, 20 kgs of weight, started cycling, started gymming, doing everything, yoga. And today he bikes 100 kilometers on Palm Beach Road and twice a week. He's got a whole fan club in the Decathlon store. They'll come hang with him. And these are not 70 today. He's inspired almost 100 people to start exercising. His stomach has come down by 5 inches, no tablets. See, this is what graceful aging is, purposeful aging. And I've seen, I don't know, I can't even enumerate, but there are hundreds and thousands of stories like these. So it's very nice to see, people take back control, and it starts just with a little weight loss, little weight loss. When someone compliments you, that you're looking better, I've seen that creates a different loop, I mean, there's so many children's stories also, but we can go on and on.
Right.
There are two cases I personally remember. I always remember these two, but many others.
What would be your advice to young professionals who would like to take their career in lifestyle medicine and maybe diabetes reversal?
I think the number one thing before you take any career choice, don't come here if you're looking for money. Okay? Don't come here because in lifestyle, you cannot get somebody to eat less, fast and exercise and pay you. Okay? He's not going to do it. He's only going to do it if he's like one step away from an emergency situation. Okay, at that point, and even then, for you to make a name for yourself, to be able to convince them, it's not going to happen by making a few reels where you talk about something is better than something, and ye kada pio and wo kada pio. It's not so simple. Okay, there's a lot of science to it, and my suggestion is, there's a famous saying in medicine that if you can get 100 families to come to you, you will never starve as a doctor. Similarly, in lifestyle medicine, if you can find your tribe of say 500,000 people whom you have inspired with your own transformation, you lost weight, you follow a healthy lifestyle, you get your tribe. And that's all you need to do. Just inspire some people. You're already in this profession. Whether you can make a living from it or not requires you to then undergo certain level of certifications, qualifications, lot of patience. You have to build a system because you can't do everything. You can't give them the diet also, do the exercise also, manage their medicines also. So it's a very collaborative approach, and getting people from different fields to work together is not easy in this field. So my suggestion is pick what you really like, whether it's the nutrition part, whether it's the exercise part, whether it's the medical part, and kind of build a niche for yourself. I would hope a person who comes here is a little bit of an extrovert, because you need to be able to go out there and convince and influence people. Otherwise, if you're a bit of an introvert waiting in a room that people will come and ask me, it's a little hard. That's great in the medical profession because people come to you on their own. But when you're in lifestyle medicine, you have to step out.
Yes, that's true. Even in any other profession in that case, working in silos never works.
Yeah, but India, to be honest with you, I have seen India now 20 years. We are not a collaborative society. We are always first seeing what is the motive of the other guy. So we are not particularly a collaborator. So it's not easy to get up from India in any part, just go somewhere, give them a proposal, let's collaborate, and they will start collaborating the next day. No. It happens in capital cities a lot, like Bangalore, Mumbai, where people quickly move ahead and see that there are mutual benefits and they'll work. But in the other towns, people are very protective of their tribe. So they will not open up their cards, and you'll waste a lot of time running around convincing people to work with you, and eventually you'll become negative and say, oh, I better leave this country. So instead, it is very important that I said you find your tribe, whether it's the bunch of colleagues who want to work with you or the patients who want to work with you. Whether let's say you're from South India, you speak a particular language, you have an advantage in that area, go work there. It might take a year or two, but you will get your tribe, and go where you have low hanging fruits, where it's easier to get those connections. You have a few family connections, start from there. That's how I started here. I had a few family connections. People should see me. I got called for a lot of talks. Suddenly I got called for certain clubs where I met people, and then from there someone told me, oh, I'm following this. From there I met Dr. Pramod, who I work with now as a co-founder. Things keep evolving. Problem with a lot of us is we want it all on day one, and that won't happen. Again, I told you, collaborations here are not easy. Abroad, people collab. I call Dubai, US, they are all yes cultures. When you go with a proposal, people will say yes. They will sit and negotiate with you, but if they like what you say, they will say yes. In India, first people will say no, and it's called the country of the no. There will be no on every level till they figure out genuinely is there something in it for them, and it takes a long time, and then half your energy is like, हाँ बाबा आपको भी मिलेगा, and then it's like, so it's very tough unless you're this guy who can just like a set business model, say real estate or something else, where it's easier.
Yeah. So there is a saying, related to this, like nobody claps until everyone claps. So that's the scenario. So yes, so one simple and powerful tip that you can give to people who are suffering from diabetes.
I would say number one would be genuinely reduce SOS, which is salt, oil, and sugar. It's not rocket science. Secondly, I would say genuinely, and I'm saying this with lots of experience, it would be good if they reduce the dairy in their diet. We have seen magical results when dairy is stopped. But we find this hard to convince Indians, and they can shift to coconut milk, and other stuff. Coconut milks and almond milk. And this has been the number one change that we have produced in a lot of people is, see, diabetes is a dietary inconvenience. It's a dietary inconvenience. That's all it is, nothing else. So, as long as people accept that if they make one shift in their life, it will change everything. Just dairy. It's not that they have to completely stop chai ka doodh and doodh ka chai and all that. They can have it, but this 4 times a day, 5 times a day. So milk contains a thing called insulin-like growth factor. So when Indians eat over too much food, plus they go and have too much milk, we find that creates problem. The second thing I would request most people is to genuinely track their protein intake. I've seen, and especially I've seen this highest problem is in Gujarat and to some extent even in Rajasthan, the vegetarian states of India. Even up north, there's a lot of vegetarianism from Haryana and all, but these states tend to depend on dairy for protein. So I have found that if you don't get your protein rationally, and I'll give you one tip that, let's say my parents weighed between, my grandparents were 50 to 60 kgs. My parents were 60 to 80 kgs. So there's a 15, 20 kg inflation. I'm already 80 kgs. My children are 80. So they will grow to 90. So there is this weight inflation in every generation that is occurring. And it is part of a more and more of an affluent society. It's normal. You take an average American, they are all 100 kgs, unless they are hyper athletic or something. So this 20 kg inflation in every generation has to be met by a 20% inflation in the protein intake every day. The problem with us is we only increase rice and dal and roti. So protein nahi badhne ke karan, the fat percent keeps increasing in the person because of the high carb intake. This is the number one reason why Indians are rapidly becoming diabetic. And protein is expensive. It's not cheap. And in general, I understand when the lower economic stratas, it's tough. But even in the higher economic strata, we have shifted that calories of the top to things like snacky items, the deep fried carbohydrates. So, whether it is like in Gujarat, I just traveled last month. There's a lot of I don't know, what do you call them? Atiyas and, the morning stuff. There's a lot of items in the morning.
It starts with besan. Yeah.
Besan. So that's where the protein little bit comes, but it also comes with a lot of soy, sugar, and salt, sugar, and oil. So we have to find ways in the vegetarian diet to genuinely, all mothers should look for the protein. Don't just give the child all the time this stuff. For that, the culture at home has to change. And like your dining table has to have dry fruits on it. Every time you walk past a dining table, you're hungry. You can't open a namkeen packet every time. You have to start opening dry fruits. These are expensive. So when a family of 4 starts consuming dry fruits every day, we're talking 2,000 rupees of dry fruits. For example, protein shakes. In my house, we have almost 8,000 rupees of protein shakes every month for between 6 people. My parents, my kids are so. Again, where do you choose to spend? We have zero medicine spent in my house. Zero. People are willing to spend 25,000 on medicines every month, but you tell them 2,000 on protein and they won't spend it. So there's a lot of psychological baggage, in us. I'm just hoping we are able to move the needle a little in the next 5, 10, 15 years, convince.
Right. I hope so. All right. It was really an insightful conversation, and thank you so much for joining us in today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for making the effort. Yeah, Nita.